Okay, hello and welcome to the Bricecast. This is episode 10. I'm, of course, Bryce. Thank you for all the love on the YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so far. I'm enjoying doing these. I'll try and do as many as possible, but we have another great show for you this week. Join me this week, co-founder of Decerto, probably the leading Call of Duty esports coverage website out there at the moment. It's Mike Kent, or Decerto. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Bryce. Thanks very much. Just enjoying, although it's on a delay, I'm enjoying your hair. It looks
It's
fantastic.
outrageous again, isn't it?
I've never seen this like shark fin thing going, but
It's
I'm
usually
actually enjoying it.
it's usually like a mohawky thing, but like my problem is my hair. Like it goes, it's okay, it's long, it's outrageous. It just can't do anything with it. So
Yeah,
I need to go get another haircut and book another appointment and do all the COVID prep and all that sort of stuff that you have to do for it at the moment. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I've been putting it off again.
Can I
So
just say, Bryce? I mean, as much as I appreciate you saying that we're possibly the largest COD esports news website in the world,
yeah,
we're the largest esports website in the world, or if you call it
period.
generic esports anyway. Maybe HLTV from pure CS:GO, but aside from that, we're the largest.
Okay, well, I wanted to say more, but I'm always wary of making a mistake in those
All right,
regards. But
yeah.
I think
Well, to be
that's
fair, I mean, you don't. I mean, you can see like you can see some numbers with certain tools and stuff,
yeah,
but I mean, if you're talking about like the size of our socials, we've got nearly 8 million followers across all our socials, including obviously one of the big ones, which is Charlie Intel.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I guess we have expanded a little bit beyond esports, so people are hesitant, but definitely, I think we're definitely the biggest,
Hey,
definitely the best.
I have no issue with that. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about because let's get straight into it then, right? So many things to talk about, and we can. This is definitely going to go on a few tangents because you've been around for so long. We're going to dive into
Yeah, it's fine.
but Decerto, its reputation and the way people look at the site somehow, even for me, right? I've struggled in the past to forget that you guys are no longer that small, dinky operation with like three of you going to events and
Yeah.
trying to figure this stuff out by yourselves. Because you expanded so rapidly over a couple of years, and it was almost like people didn't notice as much, even though obviously your numbers were there.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, like take for instance, take obviously you won the coverage website of the year last year at
Yeah.
the Esports Awards, right? Now I remember being in those panel meetings and speaking on Decerto's behalf and saying, look, realistically, now I found out a bit more about the business. You know, they have expanded massively. They do incredibly good numbers, right? And it's something we can't ignore. The previous year, you still had very good numbers, but it was almost as if people knew of you but didn't know the extent of what you were actually doing. Like people didn't
Yeah.
really realize the
Well, that's
numbers
it,
you were
isn't it?
putting through in socials. They didn't really recognize how many clicks you were getting. You know, this rash of content you guys currently put out is phenomenal. And like I
Yeah.
said, for me personally, it was a difficult mental jump for me to not just think of you as the three, guys and the few others I've always known to and obviously the old COD forum to the powerhouse you now are.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about Decerto, we started Decerto with an X anyway. Just started in 2015, and that was born about I was away working in a normal job, quote unquote normal, working in recruitment, and Chris, Josh, and Nico, they basically got some investment, like an angel investor, to come back, and the idea was let's restart Decerto properly. Let's do it full time. Let's put everything behind it. Let's turn it into like this big media company. Let's disrupt, quote unquote, the industry and really kind of like bring this style that we knew we had, but we just hadn't been able to, in the past, it hadn't really come across. So,
Yeah.
Set up a new website, had all these ideas, and at first we were like, we're going to be this 24/7 esports coverage website where it'll combine like, HLTV with Liquipedia, with ESPN style coverage, with all this deep stats and analytics, and like we're gonna like, it's just gonna be the number one place. And actually what happened is we tried that and we just found that it wasn't really what people wanted. And actually what people wanted was they wanted to read about the personalities, they wanted to understand what was going on in the space, they wanted to really kind of learn about the storylines and the connections and why two people were beefing on Twitter,
Yeah.
and not a 2,000 word match report on why I don't know, someone beat someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was people just aren't interested in that. And then over the years, we just covered COD at first, and we attended all the COD. I flew out to pretty much all of the 2015, 2016. I flew out to pretty much all of the events. Went out to like interview the players, and back then there was no press room, or even in 2015, 2016, there was no press room or interviews. I was literally just like carrying a camera around, going up to people, to players who I either kind of knew through Twitter or I'd known from the past, and going, or I'd seen them on the stage and just been like, "Can we do an interview?" And like a lot of the time they'd be like, "No,"
That
or
was so
sometimes
common back then.
yeah. So, and obviously sometimes you have to convince them. Sometimes they wouldn't do the interview with you because you'd not put them in you'd not put them in the top 3 in the predictions or something like that. As ridiculous as that. But we kind of did it, and we just got all these interviews, and even in the COD space, people. And then obviously we had that whole drama with Reddit, which, in hindsight was my fault and kind of was a big mistake on my part. But actually, I think it was a good thing for DEXERTO, and we've said this before, but without Reddit, we had to understand how SEO works, how social media works, how to actually get clicks without just going on a forum and then getting a load of traffic.
Let's talk about that then, Mike. Before we go any further, because like I said, there is such an amount of history with you. We could be here for an hour, right? Because we haven't even covered back when the X was a C yet. Because that's, in my mind, that's DEXERTO, and you guys had to rebrand, and we'll get to all of this. There is so much people don't really understand about your business and your world. Let's talk about the Reddit thing, because that's super interesting to me in what actually happened and the turmoil. And I know it was not the most fun of times for DEXERTO. But from your perspective, tell me what happened.
So what happened is we were obviously going out to all these events, spending all this money to attend all these events. We didn't really have any sponsors at the time, especially not in 2015, 2016. We were going out to all these events. We were putting our obviously we had like a limited amount of funding. We weren't making anything from the website at the time, or not enough. And we were putting it all on the line, and we were like trying to attend all these. Like we were staying in the worst possible hotels ever.
Yes,
like
you were. Yes,
the
Christmas
worst
specials. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we'd kind of had this battle with Reddit where we were the only real site create at the time, apart from like there might be like 1 or 2. We were the only real site at the time, kind of like creating this content around COD Esports. And I felt I was a bit frustrated at the time because I didn't think that the people on Reddit really understood that. And actually what they did is they just immediately were like, fuck those guys. You can't submit your own content onto Reddit, right? Or you have to have this ratio thing.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was, and I admit I was wrong in this thinking, I thought, well, why can't you do that? Why can't you do that? I don't have time to sit and post 9 or whatever. I think the ratio is not that bad actually, but I don't have time to sit and post.
It should be 1 in 10.
Yeah, I think maybe they even did 1 in 3, which obviously is nothing. But I was kind of like, why can't I just post on this? I'm creating content. I'm creating, I'm flying around the world to these events trying to interview players and trying to find great content, and you guys are just ignoring it. So why can't I just post it on there? I shouldn't have to. And actually, all that did is that just put the Reddit mods' backs up, and they were just like, "Well, fuck you guys," which is fair enough. And obviously, then the reason we got banned is because I went on Twitter and I was frustrated because I'd posted like an interview with Hex, I think, and it got taken down straight away for some reason, or I think because of the ratio thing. Yeah. So then I was like, well, why is that being taken down? Like, so I went on Twitter and I said, can you? Oh, D says he's been banned since 2014. So I went on and I said, why can't we just? Oh, sorry. I went on Twitter and I posted on the main DEXERTO account, and it was up for about 10 seconds, which is long enough. And it said, if anyone can post this DEXERTO, anyone post this interview with Hex on the DEXERTO Reddit, on the COD Reddit, sorry, then I'll give them 3,000 game battle points or whatever the fuck it was at the time. I don't know what it was. Anyway, obviously realized that was a stupid thing to tweet anyway. So I took it down about 10 seconds, but of course it was caught in that time. Before I know it, there's this massive thread that says I've been banned. Then, I mean, to be fair, we got a fair bit of publicity for it. People were kicking off. And I kind of just, and what I should have done when I first went on that Reddit is I should have like tried to make friends with everyone, but instead I had this like pretty cocky attitude and it just didn't work out for me. And as a result, got banned. And I think we were banned on there for about 3 years.
It was a long time because I had many conversations myself with Reddit mods. I'd be like, come on, it's been a while now. Like,
well, look, one of the guys that banned us, he works for us now. He's worked for us for like maybe 3 years. He's one of my senior writers. He's like, he's one of my really valuable member of staff. Like, so as soon as I kind of realized that I was actually being a dick, then I kind of like sought to repair it and kind of like over the course of time, stop trying to defend myself for what I did. And I'm not defending what I did now. It was a mistake. And then, so eventually eventually they agreed that other people could submit stuff. And then I think we can now, but we just don't.
Just in case.
Or every now and then we do. Cause like one of the top people on the forum is like one of our writers, or on Reddit, sorry, is one of our writers.
Yeah.
Every now and then he'll post something if we think it's really like important, but otherwise we'll just let it get on there organically, which it does. But I still think it doesn't get on there as much as I would like. But then that's just the reality. And actually, the views from that Reddit now, is they don't really like the views from Reddit in general. I mean, you look at anything like CS:GO, LOL, COD, like the views pale in comparison to getting something that's popular on Google. It's just nowhere near.
It's interesting because you mentioned that because obviously like going down this path a little bit myself at the moment, we're doing some content and stuff. Like how much, but especially back in the day, like how much that must have affected Decerto because back in the day they used to really move the needle. A Reddit post would move the needle in a positive way, and obviously, like you said, you were trying to build something, and what kind of like how devastating it was to Decerto? Like I imagine there were some probably heated meetings. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, it was just I'd realized straight away that I'd been an idiot, and Chris and Josh obviously annoyed at me, and that was fine. But like, it was just like, right, what we're gonna do? Like everything that happens with Decerto, there's always something going wrong. You know what I mean? It's literally never plain sailing. There's always something happening. Yeah. There's always something like there's always a fire to put out somewhere. But that's just normal for a business when you've got 70 staff all around the world. When when you're creating content that's when you're creating content about stuff that's like, especially stuff where people are accused of stuff, or when you're covering what someone said and they get upset and post about on Twitter because they've said something and we've reported what they've said. And there's always something going on. But I think that's just normal for any sort of business that's growing in our size.
Yeah, no, I fully understand. And I suppose that's one of the key reasons we're talking today. Right now, I've obviously put it out with the tagline, this podcast with the tagline of everyone hates Decerto.
I know, yeah. People actually, I've had some troll like fucking messaging me saying all this shit, but whatevs.
I mean, the funny was it. Clayson put "fuck Decerto" recently. That's become kind of a meme itself, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So the reason that came about is because I found out that he was getting dropped from Empire. Obviously, we're gonna report on that. I knew you'd have something ready. I knew it was going to be like. So I didn't say anything to him, which I'm glad I didn't, because about 2 minutes after we posted, he posted this massive tweet longer. So if I'd tweeted it, we wouldn't have got that exclusive. So, and nobody would have believed me that I'd had it. So, this is just kind of the way it works. And actually, I think that people are unnecessarily upset about leaking. And if I was an organization, I'd be leaking stories left, right, and center about me, because you get 3 ways. You get the double publicity, you get the leak publicity, as long as the contract, and then it's people are and ahhing, not sure, and then people are like interested in your account and stuff, and then you get people, and then you get the actual announcement, and then people then celebrate that. I don't get why people are so like organizations. If I was an organization, I'd be slipping the Decerto or whoever like leaks all the time, 100%. But maybe that's just me being selfish.
Just you plugging Decerto right now.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because Decerto really gets some backlash, like outrageous amounts of backlash when you break.
It doesn't though. Not if you think of the actual like amount of people that give backlash, it's tiny in comparison to the actual amount of people that visit the site. It's minute. It's like like you might have like someone kick off, but like the amount of hate that it's Twitter is just a storm in a teacup. People are so upset on Twitter about absolutely everything. They're never going to just tweet and be like, "Oh, DeSoto's did a nice thing." When have you ever seen that? Like, just like with any sort of like every publication, it's almost no one ever sit and praises. You never go on BBC. No one's ever sit and praises what they do. Nobody does. Like, it's all, you look at any of their replies, it's, "Oh, I can't believe you wrote about this. Can't believe you wrote about that. This is wrong. This isn't right. I can't believe this." Like, Twitter is just a storm in a teacup. And if you don't take it for anything other than that, then you're going to have mental health issues because you're going to be upset all the time. And like, you look at someone like Ninja, right? He's obviously, Ninja, it's like, look at his replies, almost every single one. He'll get thousands of replies on every tweet he does, and they're all absolutely negative, right? Or a lot of them are negative. I couldn't imagine what it's like to look at his Twitter feed. And actually, like, in comparison, if most of the time when DeSoto tweets, it's about the story. It's not about DeSoto. But occasionally you have someone like Chris who tweets "fuck DeSoto," and it's almost like
it's such a fun. I think it's a great meme, and I don't even know why.
I like it. I like it. But I messaged Chris after, and I was like, "Come on, you love us really?" And he was like, "No, I don't." I was like, "All right."
Well, that's an interesting part. Like, I've heard stories of the part of players refusing to do interviews with DeSoto because of like you said before in the past, either you've broken the story early or you've tweeted about it. And the funny thing I've always said about DeSoto is, you guys put out a lot of content or about a streamer beef or about something that happened on stream or all this, and I'm like, still click it though. Like, I will still click an article. It's that thing about clickbait. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's clickbait. It's clickbait." No, clickbait is something that you put in a title that doesn't happen, but you usually, credit to DeSoto on this point, will have that thing in the article. Like, you're saying, "Oh, excuse
you know what?
Something gone."
You know what? We've actually changed, and this is a massive misconception of DeSoto, is that if you look at in the past, we used to try and like, bait's the wrong word, but we always used to try and get people to click into the articles. I'm talking like probably like pre 2019, right? We'd always try and like encourage people to click into the article by being like, we wouldn't say the player name in the tweet, or we wouldn't say anyone's in the like. Well, what am I trying to say? I'm tripping on my words. We would like basically bait people into clicking it by saying this information is going to be in the article. But actually, if you look now, what we do and what we've done for the last year, it's not like that at all. We actually put most of the information in the tweet. We actually started just, we used to have clips in the article. We now actually just have the clips in the tweets. So you can find out more information if you want. But actually, this notion that we're clickbait it's completely like, I think it's completely undeserved. We don't actually clickbait at all. In fact, we're completely against it. And if someone does a tweet on one of the writers and it seems a bit baity, we'll say that's too baity. You need to give more information, because we realize the value of actually, you tell a story on Twitter or social media or whatever, then those people are then going to find, like, they're then going to retweet it, they're going to share it, and actually it'll get more, DeSoto's more known for that and it's way more valuable for that than people actually clicking into the website. But when it comes to the titles, we're governed by how much Google kind of recommends. So if you think you've got to get everything into a 72 characters, right? Because that's the cutoff on Google, then of course we're gonna have to omit some of the information. But you want to still get the key keywords in there. But actually, I think the notion of a clickbait is completely outdated. And if you look at our content, it's not like that at all.
No, like I said, something I was agreeing with. I think it's very interesting because people have this misconception about clickbait is just a catchy title, right? If you put out a thing saying XQC, I don't know, punched his monitor, right, and you put that out as a title, and then he has done it, and it explains the context in the article, well, that's unfortunately not clickbait. While you may want to click it because it's an interesting thing, you have done exactly what you said on the tin. And I think it's so interesting to me for DeSoto in terms of the journalism and the way you go about it, because people only ever like moan going, "Oh, why are you talking about what Scump had for breakfast?" And I'm like, well, they don't really talk about that, right?
That's literally like a completely made up article, and it's like, that's literally never. I think the worst thing we ever tweeted about Scump was something, and this again was in like 2016, 2017, was something about him experiencing jet lag or something like that, and it was just basically like a funny article based around his tweets where he'd been traveling to an event and he thought he was going to die or something like that. it was just such a harmless piece, but like people get so upset by DeSoto, so they're just seething with anger. They're like, oh my god, they just do so much clickbait, and it's like, fuck off, get a life, just chill out. People are so angry at shit on the internet, and it's unbelievable. Like, you think that I'm bothered that like someone's put in the chat here about Crim was getting annoyed. Crim's annoyed about stuff we've done, right?
Yeah.
Crim's annoyed because we reported stuff from a certain angle, which was to almost he talked about Huntsman in an interview, and when he was talking about Huntsman in the interview, we then made the article, and we probably asked him that question, to be fair. So in a way, it's kind of like phrasing a storyline. But guess what? People want storylines. Anyway, so we phrased it around Huntsman and Dallas, and there was some sort of like framed it as around what he'd said was an issue, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's the reason he's upset. And he's just upset because, well, that's the main reason, I think. I'm not even sure. He feels like we've taken stuff out of context, which, if we have, I mean, it's not been a massive deal, but he as a result, is not interested. So there you go. And you know what? I'm fine with Ian. Like, I'm fine with Clayster. Like, Clayster will say, "Fuck DeSoto," but Mike's all right. You know what I mean? Like, but there's another thing that people think that I write every single article on DeSoto as well. People have this conception.
I think you do.
Like, it's as if there's not like someone's person's name at the top. Do you think I've got time to write 50 articles a day, ranging from TikTok to Call of Duty to, we even started writing about some sort of like fitness and cars stuff. It's like, do you think I'm writing about all these things? Do you think I've got any involvement in that at all? It's like I'm the person overseeing it from the very top. It's mad that people think that I'm still writing everything.
Does it bother you being a face?
Well, I'm not really a face, am I? I mean,
if DeSoto had a face, it has to be. Well, I was trying to think who else it could possibly be. Like, for me, I always think of it as.
Well, yeah, I'm probably the face if you think like that, but only to a very small amount of people. Like, to a very even like a minute amount of people, I'm the face. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm the. There's not many people that would know outside of probably the Call of Duty community and maybe some.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, apart from that, nobody's really like, oh, that's Mike Kennedy. He owns DeSoto.
Yeah.
They don't even know I own it. Sometimes they just think I work for them.
Do you think, like, it's interesting you talked about like the Huntsman stuff, right? Because going back, obviously you knew back then that anything optic would move the needle, right? Anything to do with Scump, Nade, Hex, they moved the needle more for DeSoto than anything else. Nowadays, I feel like you guys obviously don't need to do any of that, and that's probably why your attitude towards it all has changed. Because DeSoto is its own monster in terms of, getting to the top of SEOs, dominating social media. Do you prefer it now that you feel like you can just be more honest and just cover things without having to worry about?
Well, yeah, because the problem we had, right, is back in the day when it was just me writing about stuff and I was just focused on Call of Duty.
Yeah.
The problem you have is you're like, well, this gets views, so I'm just going to try and find a story out of absolutely anything.
Yeah.
And that was almost like that was one of the problems. Like, but over the course of over the last few years, especially, we've gone into such a diverse range that actually we actually limit how much we discuss the topic or how much something's happening. But back when we were covering Call of Duty, obviously we're going to cover absolutely anything that Optic did because they were the ones that got all the views. Like, that's the normal thing to do. It's like, if you know that if you know you're playing tennis, right, and tennis probably not right. If you're playing football and your striker's going to score 50 goals a season, you're going to put him up front. Like, that's the same thing. Like, it's crazy that people were bothered that we'd write about Optic, but then, that's just the way it was. But actually over time, we've kind of, it is nicer that we're not actually relying on one specific area because, that means that we can cover things from, and I actually think our Call of Duty coverage now is way better than it's ever been because we are covering things from a higher level. We're covering the big important news, we're covering all these Warzone tournaments. We're covering anything that happens, even beyond the CDL. We're trying to report it in a fair and balanced way. And in the past, we might have wrote more about, say, Huntsman, but we probably write more about, we try to spread that more now, not because we need to, but just because we don't need to get the numbers from posting about, say, Optic, but we'll probably still, if you looked at the stats or something, I'm sure we probably still cover Huntsman stuff more than others. But I mean, why wouldn't you?
Let's talk a little bit about the kind of the expansion of Deserto then, because there obviously was a point, or at least a heavy transitionary period, with going from being a small outfit to being a juggernaut now. That there are steps along the way that have been remarkable for your working environment, for how the business has conducted itself. Because I think I had a conversation with someone at the Esports Awards, and I'm trying to remember who exactly it was from your Deserto team, but there was a lot of drinking going on. And they were talking about numbers per day on the website. And they even said, just a year ago, we were worried about hitting like 1 million clicks a day. And then going on now on like our worst days, it's like 1.5. What is that kind of that scale up done to just to Deserto from 2015 and now?
I think it's allowed us to invest way more into like video. It's allowed us to invest more into social. We've done stuff like the acquisitions, like we took on Charlie Intel and Fortnite Intel. We recently, expanded a little bit more into the FIFA area. We're working with a site called Footwatch. We've expanded, and we've got this new like bunch of new socials that are all focused around like TVs and movies. We've got a bunch of socials that are focused around cars. We've got socials, we've got socials coming out of our eyes because we've created and helped build this sort of big empire. So, the clicks on the website, that's all well and good, but actually that's only like, it's almost like there's always a ceiling, and it's like you want to make sure that you spreading everything, because one day Google or the website or whatever, you don't want to rely just on that. You want to rely, you want to spread your eggs sort of thing. So we're just trying to expand a lot of different areas. Video is a big one for us. Obviously social, but the website's still key as well. But it's, we just want to cover more areas. We want to cover more topics. We really want to be like, I think we are to a lot of people, like a destination where people can go and read about content they're interested in. I mean, when Deserto first started, like the Deserto is pretty much what I want to read. You know what I mean? It's like esports, but personality based. There's a lot of entertainment stuff, like about the TikTokers, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's like we're just trying to expand and just trying to be like bigger and better, and all the money we make is always reinvested back into the site. Like, you know what I mean? I don't live in a mansion. I don't drive a fancy car. Like, you know what I mean? Every single penny of like anything that we make on Deserto gets reinvested, because that's what we're about. We want to make sure that we've got 70 staff around the world. That's like crazy thought to think, like,
But it's a good number. I think one of the, and I'll like, here's the thing, right? So I am no stranger to giving people a hard time on a podcast ever. But this is one of the, but I've always said, right, credit where it's due. If somebody does something good and I enjoy what they do, I'll give full credit for it. When I spoke on, because we discussed Deserto at the Esports Awards panel, right? One that you eventually went out to win, right? You guys were discussed, and I said, there were other people in that conversation saying, hey, look, we need to really look at this coverage website. They are doing incredible work. Did that mean a lot to you, the Esports Awards award? Like, I don't know how you feel about, well, some people don't give a shit, right? But was that like did it feel like a momentous occasion? Because obviously I ended up actually giving the award to you. I had no idea before I got there that it was me giving it to you. But like, to win an award from, an industry panel within esports, or something that you've worked on and has been a passion project for you from the very beginning, was it kind of like a vindication?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like when you win something like that, it's kind of like it's 100% validation of everything you've been doing, because people will shit on you on social media and call you scum and all this sort of stuff, but people don't understand like how much work goes into Deserto behind the scenes, how many long hours we all work, like how much dedication the staff put into, and how much the staff, like, not everyone is like me and been involved in this industry for like 15 years, and someone calls them out on Twitter, they're not going to necessarily brush it off as well as I would. And that, so to win was like massive for us. It was like, it was just kind of like, would tick that box, you know what I mean? And obviously we'd love to win it again, and I hope we will this year. But for us, it's like that was something that we said in 20, which year was it? We won 2019. So
Yeah.
in 2018, we were sat there and ESPN won, and I remember Chris just saying, next year we're going to win it, and it's not even going to be. We're not going to go there even doubting that we've not won it, and that's kind of what we just put everything towards. So, when it comes to Decerto, we actually create a lot of esports content when it doesn't actually get that, when it actually doesn't do that well views wise. But what we do is we create that content because we understand the value that brings to people. We understand the value that esports content is going to play in a wider role, and we know that eventually when esports gets huge, that's also something that's going to kind of be in our back pocket that we've kind of kept in it, and we actively will recruit for games that we know that isn't going to get too much traction compared to covering like more mainstream topics, but we'll cover it because we are dedicated to esports. And I think that's always forgotten, I think, as people are like, you just have to clicks. Well, if we just have to clicks, we just absolutely would not write about esports. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Actually, I think one of the things that really and further your point, right? One of the things that I know people are very enthusiastic of, or have spoken to a good version of the show is the fact that you brought on esports writers that knew what they were talking about. Very good articles in terms of like Richard Lewis, right?
Yeah,
you brought him on board, and it's kind of like if you're bringing on journalists of his caliber, to do the serious articles as well as the ones that move the needle, it obviously speaks volumes to how Decerto sees itself in the wider space. And I think it's a very good thing and I think that's one of the reasons like people were so happy you won at that award.
Yeah,
because it is valid that Decerto has a very big voice in the space. And, you guys have been here for an awful long time.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think, we love having people like Rich on board, because he's just, again, it's part validation, but also he just brings that experience. He has that knowledge, like, he's a super interesting person. And, we always want to bring on great talent. And, we've got some more people in the pipeline that will be announced over the next few months. And we're going to continue to do that, and that's what we want to do. We want to have the biggest and best names from the esports industry as well as other industries, like branching out into streaming or YouTube as whatever. We want the biggest and best names on Decerto. That's why we started doing the columns on Decerto, because we wanted to give like pro players a voice where they've not really had it before. And not most pro players aren't going to be able to write a big feature and get across what they feel, but if they can if we can help them to do that, then that's kind of like that's what we've been working towards. You know what I mean?
No, I get that. I think so this is an interesting one. You spoke about all the verticals you're spinning up as Decerto, right? Now, that is obviously taking you further and further away. You personally, by the way, further and further away from where you were involved in the business. Because like you said, back in the day, writing articles, going to events, doing camera work.
Yeah.
I've remarked to the original Decerto lads and saying, I never see you at events anymore. You're always sending crews now. Is this another kind of a move away again for you in terms of like, are we going to see Mike Kent in a suit in a boardroom and then never seeing him anywhere else? Because that feels like where it's going, right? Like as a company gets bigger and you have more verticals to take care of, you have less opportunity to do the news and more kind of responsibility to dictate how the company runs.
Well, so I'm the head of content at Decerto, so I cover absolutely everything across all of it. But actually what's happened like at least in the last 6 months is we've actually been hiring like people who can do that suit in the boardroom style stuff. And it's not to say that I won't do some of that, but we've been hiring, infrastructure around Decerto and operations so that we've got people who like, that this is like me and giving a chance to me to do more content and actually get back out and do more stuff like podcasts and shows. So, I've just started a show with Richard Lewis about influencers. I've just started the Charlie Intel podcast with Keshav, who's the guy behind Charlie, who was one of the co-founders of Charlie Intel and who came across with Charlie Intel when we bought them. I've just started a podcast with him. I'm trying to do some like small social stuff. I might even do just like a podcast on my own, Bricecast style. Who knows?
But better, I imagine, way better than this.
So actually, I'm actually trying to get back more involved in content because there was a stage where I stepped back, But the reason I stepped back is because it was through necessity, through, we didn't have that infrastructure in Deserto, but, especially over the last 6 months, we brought in some amazing people who really helped Deserto like run in the back end way better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I should never be dealing with adverts. You know what I mean? That's mad. I should, I'm a moron. Like, I shouldn't be dealing with them. I should, so yeah, but yeah, so we, my job in Deserto is the head of content, and I'm the one that helps develop the overall strategy from the top. But one thing that's always going to be the case is I'm always going to be heavily involved and Deserto will always, as long as I'm involved anyway, always be involved in esports, even if it lost us money, which it doesn't. But even if it did, we'd still be involved in esports. We'd still back it. We'd still have writers. We'd still have the big names because we are fully behind it. And I think that, we've committed to esports and we'll always be known for our esports because that's a passion, especially of mine, is esports. So why wouldn't it be?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, people forget that you've been around for a long time with that. And we'll go on to that in just a second because there's a whole history before this that people will ignore. The question I wanted to ask you is, what is the worst backlash you've ever received for Deserto? What it's done? Like, is there a moment where a pro player has gone berserk or an organization has gone berserk? Because I know this happens, right? I've spoken to other journalists. Remember when I did another podcast? I think it was Richard Lewis and Adam Fitch. We spoke about journalism. We spoke about what happens behind the scenes and how you can be blacklisted from orgs and TOs. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind of something that you went really badly wrong or blew up without expecting it?
I mean, not really. I'm pretty. I wouldn't say I put my foot in it. I'm pretty. I don't really express too many opinions on social media. I think we've obviously, just like with any site, we've made mistakes with articles before, but we've always tried to rectify those. But I can't really think of any significant backlash. Callum's in the chat. Well, let's see what Callum thinks. He's in the chat. I don't know maybe Hastro when he kicked off, but I don't think that was like.
I was going to say your response.
Oh yeah, that was it for Gazy. So I can't remember the exact story, but I think one of the writers who wasn't really that into COD, but he was just covering COD for some reason. Yeah. He wrote about a COD player called Fugazi, which obviously wasn't a real person. And that just blew up. So I think that meme still appears on Reddit sometimes. So I think people don't even realize that it was our mistake. But yeah, that was that was definitely a mistake. That was a funny mistake.
I think I missed that one. I never knew that actually happened. That's brilliant.
Oh yeah, that was pretty embarrassing. But you know what? You've got to laugh at those things because it's like, why would you be upset? Like it. To be fair, it wasn't like I'd feel upset if we did like a post that was wrong about someone, and affected their character. But thinking that it was a made up player called Fugazi, that's just a right at making a mistake.
That's brilliant. People were talking about that,
and the Hastro thing.
Yeah,
that was just because he was annoyed that I think again, is it like people think that the people like me, Chris, Josh, Nico, we're like controlling exactly what's said in editorial, which just isn't true at all. Because I mean, I'd never have any time to do anything else, even sleep. So we'd done like a power rankings for the season, and we'd put Dallas, I think it's second, and Huntsman in at first.
Yes, yeah.
And Hastro lost it on Twitter, and then we just had a bit of a back and forth. As Rab said, got myself in a thumbnail on his thing because I called him out. But then me and Mike sorted it out behind the scenes. It was all good, I'm a big fan of Hastro, always have been. Like, I love that everything he's done. I've known him since like 2007 or something stupid. Like, but that it was just to kind of there was just a bit of frustration boiled over onto Twitter, but it was resolved within like a couple of hours. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's had memes for months though. It's interesting, right? Because this is another point of your personality I want to put up. I think the position you're in now, especially on social media, Mike, is that you and there's no eloquent way to put this. I just think it's like fuck off is basically your response when people give you shit, right? It's very easy, like, and that's very blunt way to put it, but like when you react to people on socials, it's not like you're going, oh, maybe you're just like, no, I don't give a shit, you're an idiot. Like, you don't hold back in terms of addressing criticism in a very blunt term.
Maybe. I don't know. Because the only people I generally respond to are like fucking idiots. You know what I mean? Like people who are just clearly morons that it's like,
Yeah.
well, of course and sometimes I've like I say, I've been on like forums and in the scene since like, I mean, I first played a competitive game back in like 2003, I think, playing Rainbow Six. Like and there was like different forums and different stuff. I'm a massive troll. Like I'll wind up anyone. So if I can see that someone's bothered by me, I'll just try and like poke the bear a bit and see like how much responses I'll get. And I had someone the other day send me like messages saying kill yourself, and I literally just replied like haha for like 5 minutes, and then I don't think he even replied to me. So I don't know. I like winding people up. I like to it's just kind of in my nature to kind of poke fun at people. And I don't know, on social media as well, it's like I don't need to like validate myself. I don't need to be like, I don't know, I don't need to win any fans. Whether I have a popular Twitter account or not is never going to determine the success of the set or not.
No, that's fair. That's completely fair. I just thought it was interesting that you're basically a no-nonsense approach to Twitter. You really don't care to pander when you don't have to. Somebody attacks you first.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the.
I usually cut it short. Like I won't normally go at it with like a big content creator. Yeah. I don't see the point in that. If a lot of the times if someone like tries to have a go on Twitter, I'll message them like privately and be like, "What's up? Like, why don't you talk?" Like, if there's an issue with an article or something, I'll be like, "What's up? How can I help?" Like, if you actually speak to people who've had an issue with Decerto and they spoke to me, 99% of the time I've resolved it. Like either by editing the part of the article or rephrasing it or whatever. If something's wrong on Decerto, I'll fix it 100%, almost all the time. And that's what people should do. If they ever spot a mistake on Decerto, they should just contact me and I'll fix it. But when it comes to trolls and like if someone just clearly just like is just desperate for that like from their favorite COD Pro player, that favorite COD Pro player that's probably like a friend of mine, and they're just so upset, and it's like they'll just say anything to try and get you a rise out of you.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I just like to fuck with those people, especially after the Clayster thing. That was hilarious.
Oh, I imagine. I don't even ever want to see your mentions, because I can't imagine the problem with with Decerto, your mentions is it can only really be negative towards you. Nobody's ever like messaging you going, "Good article, Mike," clapping you on the back.
Some people do,
Do they?
Some people do.
I can only imagine it's mostly
and you know what?
negative.
You go to an event, right? And I cannot tell you the amount of people, like high profile people, that'll come up and be like, they'll like admit that they read Decerto, and they actually like, they'll say really good things about us, and and they don't have to. It's not like it's not. Sometimes it's not even like. You know what I mean? There's obviously some people that don't as well, and you can tell. And some people might say they get like Clayster will happily say to my face what he doesn't like about Decerto, and I kind of respect that. But there's also a lot of people that will come up and like say nice things about Decerto and be like, "Oh, I enjoy reading this, I enjoy reading that. Like, I'm constantly reading it, blah blah blah." And actually, I think a lot of people, there's this misconception that everyone hates Decerto. It's just not true at all. There's some people definitely hate Decerto, and some people only hate Decerto because they think their favorite content creator hates Decerto, but they actually don't.
I think a lot of content creators like secretly get a bit gassed getting on Decerto, as long as it's for a reasonable reason. Like they're like, yeah, that's publicity, right? Being reported in the news is publicity, regardless.
Yeah, I don't get why people don't want to be on Decerto. Like, people pay a lot of money to have their brand on Decerto, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to Why wouldn't you want to feature on there? Like, why wouldn't you want to be seen by millions of people? Why wouldn't you want like if I was a content creator, like a pro player, or if I was a streamer or an influencer, I'd be messaging like people at like Decerto and all the time and be like, check this out, check this angle out. Like, oh, there's this part of this story that could be interesting. And some people do, and that actually you won't ever know. But there is times that we've created content, quite a few times we've created content because people have messaged us and said, what do you think about this? And we'll go, oh, sweet, yeah, we'll use that. Can we get a quote? Blah, blah, blah. Like, use Decerto to your advantage. We're like, we're always looking for something interesting. If you've got an interesting clip or story, or we'll push it out there because we want good content on the site.
I'll bear that in mind, Mike. I will bear that in mind.
Yeah. If you exactly, Bright. That's an example, Bryce. Right. Say the last thing I want is, say you came to me with this interview, right?
Yeah.
And you just went, "Here's an interview." I'd be like, right, that's going to take time to look through. Like, fine. If you can go, oh, right, there's a story here at this point, there's a story here at this point, or the story here at this point, maybe one of those, and then you can say to a writer, all right, go look at this, because you don't want them to sit through a whole 2-hour podcast and then be like, oh, it's not worth anything.
Yeah.
You want them to, if you give, help to sell, or help with whatever company that you send it to, whoever else is covering, like, give them help them be like, give them the storyline.
No,
you know what I mean?
I fully understand. It's like the Hastro interview on him, booked for like an hour, and you quoted the clip, and it was about him addressing the 5v5 to 4v4 thing, something that hadn't really come out. That's it. I know exactly what you mean in that regards, because there are large parts of things, especially long form content like this, right? A podcast that is not as interesting to the casual viewer, especially my interests go more into the in depth of the business side of it, but. And we'll say in jokes, and obviously people don't want to hear an in joke because they don't know what it means. But it's very interesting for me the way that people react sometimes to journalism, because there are, and I think I saw actually it was earlier. Someone called you the paparazzi of
that
was
the guy I replied to, and I went, "Oh, that's weird." That's the kind of thing I'll do, because he's called me a freelance photographer. That's what he's called me there. So I replied and said, and then he started calling me a leech, which is hilarious.
It is mad. It is mad. Let's talk about let's switch tracks, right? Because Decerto came back in 2015, like you said, as something else than what it was. Because I remember you and Chris Marsh and Josh and all that from the original Decerto, the Decerto before this Decerto, the OG C instead of an X. Quick question: the rebrand, was that a rebrand because it was a new generation of Decerto? Or I think the other thing I heard was something about the copyright. There was another website with Decerto or something.
So the problem we had with Decerto with a C is, and Decerto, this Decerto and the old Decerto with a C is, it's like a totally different company. It's not really anywhere affiliated. It's not. We didn't use the old site. We didn't like it. Obviously, is affiliated in terms of we all owned it at the same time as well. Yeah. But it was just basically created as something brand new. So. Obviously the Twitter came over, but the
logo came over as well, right?
And the logo came over. Yeah. But actually, what Decerto was a forum. That it was a forum for competitive Call of Duty players. We did some news on it.
I mean,
yeah, it was
toxic
great
forum, but very good.
Yeah, super toxic. Yeah, and it was even more toxic when I left. That was key. Because I controlled the forum and the moderators, but then when I left, it kind of went a little bit AWire. So, yeah, so when it basically, the problem with the word Decerto with a C is that it's actually a Latin word. So what we found is that a lot of people had used the word Decerto for stuff. So there's someone had made a company. There was that Decerto Esports, which was like a PC COD team. There was, we couldn't get Decerto.com. So we thought, well, what's the solution here is we switch to the X. It's like a fresh start. It's totally brand new. It wasn't really anything carried up. We tried the forums for a couple of months, but eventually we just turned it off. So it's basically just a total fresh restart, but it just kind of had some of the same people that were involved in Decerto. So it's very different. It's not the same thing effectively.
Yeah. It's
like, as much as it is, it's kind of just the same people rather than the same website. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, it does. I think it's just, I mean, especially now, right? A lot of new generation come with no idea that Decerto, how big Decerto used to be, especially for European Call of Duty back in the day. Like, that history is still always going to be there for me. I was on the Decerto forums. I had terrible times on the Decerto forums. Not going to lie. There's specific threads that I am glad you've turned that forum off. But you guys back in the day were responsible for montages. You guys had the rule sets you used to bring out for European Call of Duty, which were much better than the American rule sets. And you guys.
But like that was literally all the, all the tournaments that played in Europe played with Decerto rule sets. Like it was the Decerto rules. It was a committee of like professional players, and that would kind of decide like a gentleman's agreement now, but it was just more transparent. And the biggest example of all of that is during Black Ops 1, the FAMAS was immediately taken out, and it made it amazing. Like Black Ops 1 was one of the best games that I've ever like esports because of that, like because it was like that different, slightly different meta.
Yeah. Well, we'll have
That's
questions.
the American.
We'll have questions in the chat now, but I've got a few more for you. I kind of want to ask you about the older days versus the nowadays, because you spoke before, and I always think this is hilarious. And I mentioned it as an in-joke, a Christmas special hotel, right? Back in the day when you guys were going around bare bones, sitting on like just not having press areas, staying at the worst hotels.
Yeah.
There's so much Call of Duty esports history. Like I know, if I remember correctly, I think it was Call of Duty XP back in 2016. No press area, just like high tables and stools, but like press just crowded on them.
Yeah, so it was, that to be fair, that was even better than it was. But yeah, it was literally like high tables. And what happened at every XP or event at the time, or COD Champs event, every COD Champs event it had, it was that you just suddenly have all this media there that was like they weren't normally a normal COD event. But do you mean XP in?
I mean, no, I don't mean so. 2013
the second one or the first one?
So 2013 was XP. The
wasn't it
second
2011?
2011.
First
oh,
XP.
There's so many. Yeah, because no, 2013 was Black Ops 2, right? Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting these all confused. There's so many. The second XP, I remember you guys sitting around the tables in LA. But it's also the point, like, I've seen, I suppose it's kind of a personal thing, right? I've seen where you guys have come from and how much you guys put up with in the old days, right? And this is obviously, you can talk about the Norbrek, you could talk about the situations you've been in. I found it very funny when I've seen some of the hotels you've had to stay at to cover these events.
I think I actually I took one offline recently that it was a vlog, and it was in South Carolina. So I turned up, and it was like it was freezing as well in South Carolina. In Myrtle Beach for UMG. It was absolutely freezing there, and I went in and I went to the hotel, and it was a pretty bad place. And then I went upstairs and I read all the reviews online. It was like bed bugs and all this stuff. I was like, oh my God. So I went in, first room I went in, like there was just like a light layer of dust across the bed. Like it normally been in there for months, which I don't think they had. And I was like freaking out about it. And I thought there was shit in the bed. So I went downstairs and I said, can I have another room? And she gave me another room, and it was like almost on the top floor. And for some reason in this place, it was like a motel, but outside, but it was raised. So you're walking upstairs outside in these corridors, and there was like, it seemed like there's blood marks on the wall. I got to the door. It was like the door had been smashed in. I think I unlisted the video, so I don't think you can get it now. But
I've seen the video. It
got like 42,000 views, weirdly, like
surprising.
because I put the title as worst hotel in Myrtle Beach. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, and at the time I'd had a cold. And then when my cold cleared, all I could smell was this like thick smoke. And it was like, oh, it's disgusting. Next day I just rang Chris and I said, don't care what it costs, we've got to get out of here. Like, it was so bad.
And that was so standard back in the day as well, right? Because when you've got to kind of factor in the cost of doing all this, and you guys didn't have an infinite pot of money. It's one of these ones where, like I said, it was a Chris Marsh special. He would go and find the cheapest hotel in the area to stay at. So it must be one of those, like, you see all the players staying at these nice, plazas and everything, and you'd spend all your time there. You'd be at the plaza, you wouldn't be back at your hotel. I'm guessing now you don't travel that much. You probably see it through rose-tinted glasses, but I'm also guessing that you are very much glad that part of your career is over.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of like it didn't matter, you know what I mean? It was just like something to do, but like it didn't matter because you got to travel and you got to go places, and it did suck sometimes when you're in a shit hotel, but you can look back now and laugh at it, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's pretty funny, but yeah, it's just one of those it's one of those things where it's like, it's just the story. You have to do it. Like, you have to have sacrifices to like get there sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, if you're already spending a shitload of money to travel across, then you don't want to then have to, like, spend shitloads of money on hotels or whatever, especially with events where all the hotels would already be booked out and stuff like that. I mean, but back when I first ever started doing Decerto with a C, I actually paid myself to events to cover the events for Decerto. So I'd pay for everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know there's a few people that have done that even recently. There's a few like journalists I know that paid when their company wouldn't pay them to go, they just paid themselves.
Yeah.
And like I've seen those people then go on to do bigger and better things. I think people who put it out on the line, like here's a great example, right, of someone who put everything on the line, or basically like funded themselves to events, and now it is in a great position. So do you know Hector, right? His videographer Matty, right?
Yeah.
So I was at an event in Anaheim, I want to say in 2017 or 2018, right? I'm not sure. He DMs me saying, I've got a camera at the event. Do you want help? And I was like, all right, fine. Like, sure, I could do with some help because at the time I was just doing it one man. So he came along, he helped me. And then next event, he was like, oh, can I help you again? And he would like pay himself out to the event. I think the first couple he did with us, he'd like pay himself out to the event himself because we didn't have any money. So he'd pay himself out to the events. And then eventually we'd be like, all right, we'll pay for your hotel. We'll pay for the flight and maybe the hotel. You can stay on the floor or something. And like for like a year or something, he basically just worked for Decerto for free, like taking pictures, doing videos, like just at these events. And then eventually we started paying him a little bit, and then eventually we like paying him, and then after that we were like, well, when Hector was looking for videographer, we were like, well, you've got to hire Matty, like he's the man, you know. And he's worked for him now for like a couple of years. And that just shows you he kind of like put himself out there and like didn't care that he wasn't getting paid. He got the opportunity to like, you know, get him, because I was obviously meeting like all the different pros and I could get him like access to people and whatever. Like, you know, I helped him out, you know, hopefully taught him a few lessons. I don't know. He might disagree, but you know, I basically who knows how he would have got into the scene if it wasn't for the fact that he basically put it out on the line and like dedicated himself to dedicated himself to doing something for free or even paying for it himself, like at the very start.
No, I fully understand it. Like I said, you know, I've been down a very similar path myself, Mike. You know, I remember sleeping on floors at, you know, in Telford and stuff, and all that kinds of stuff. Here's a very quick one, because I forgot to mention this about the, you know, Hex's involvement in Decerto, because that seemed to happen and then unhappen. And it probably was a longer period of time than I remember. It felt like 6 months. It may have been a year. What actually happened there? Like, because obviously that was big news when Hex come on board.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean when he left?
So you are kind of, you know, first of all, how did Hex come on board, and then, you know, what happened and he ended up leaving?
So we'd known Hex from like back in the day when he'd come over for the EGL events with Optic, and Chris and Josh knew him especially because they were running EGL events at the time.
Yeah.
So they knew each other, and basically we'd always just stayed in touch. And I think he liked it because a lot of people always like, you know, when you're a famous, quote unquote, you know what I mean? When he's famous in this scene anyway. Like when you're popular and people know you, like people always like suck up to you, or like they're always just like overly nice. Where we just treat them like anyone else. We'd like take the piss out of him. We joke at his expense. He'd joke at our expense. Like it was, you know, we didn't treat him like he was someone famous. And I think he liked that about us. So he was just always like, oh, basically like friends with, you know, he always just there was a natural friendship there because he was just like, what, you know, one of us sort of thing. And then in obviously in 20, and I'd been out to events and I'd seen him there and stuff. And actually Hector is one of the big milestones for Decerto was like back in 2015 or 2016 when he basically took shares in Decerto, and we got the Optic Intel account on Twitter, which had like nearly 100,000 Twitter followers that were all interested in Call of Duty news. A lot of them about Optic, which, as you can see, was one of the reasons that we did that. We covered Optic a lot because we had this fan base. And we converted that account into Decerto Intel and covered Call of Duty news off it. And that was massive for us. But so, yeah, he just was always kind of in the background. We'd kind of talk to him. We'd get advice off him about stuff. You know, he didn't really have any sort of input on day to day because I just wasn't, you know what I mean? That's just, he was doing his own thing. He had Optic. He, you know, had all these other businesses he was doing. So, yeah, he just kind of, he just came on board because we did that initial trade. And then, yeah, we just kind of were just friends. And yeah, he kind of believed in us. I think it was almost like a show of like support for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I 100% understand that. So when he left, I think like one of the reasons that was kind of, or at least I understood it. I think that it was you bought him out of, well, not you personally,
Yeah,
but DeSoto bought him out of the company.
yeah. We it was like obviously like it was something we talked about for a
Uh-huh.
while, just because it was like, you know, it's obviously people kept bringing it up that he had shares in DeSoto and that he, that we were biased because of that reason and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. So we were like, he was. I think he was sick of people saying it. We were sick of people saying it, and like he made obviously enough weight. Like he doesn't need any money. He made enough money from,
Selling
he made
optics,
enough money
essentially.
from selling optic and like his current role and stuff like that. So he didn't really need to have that affiliation either.
Yeah.
So we just kind of like came to a mutual agreement on parting ways. But yeah, we still speak on a regular basis, and yeah, he's all good. I'm sure we'll be involved, and we'll probably do something with him in the future as well.
That's fair enough. All right, let's have a quick look at the questions of chat, and I'll kind of bring these as easy as I can because sometimes they're really either open ended or horrific. Someone
Yeah.
asked favorite DeSoto forums mod. Can you even remember all the mods back then?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like a really niche question.
Yeah, it's a really niche question. I didn't have a favorite. There you go.
You didn't have a favorite.
I was my favorite mod.
I've got one I actually want to interject here. What was your best day at DeSoto? Your best day?
The best day.
Yeah, a day that sticks in your memory as like either this was just a fantastic day in terms of numbers or deals you had done or sponsorships or I don't know, maybe you just had a really nice buffet that day at work. What is your best day to say? It's not an easy question, but it's a good one.
Winning the Esports Awards, that was one of them.
Because you got to hug me.
That was amazing. Yeah, I got to hug you. Before COVID and all that.
Yeah.
No, winning the Esports Awards probably one of my biggest achievement, like one of the best things, because again, it was that kind of validation of everything we do, blah blah. When we first opened the office in London,
Oh, okay.
that was pretty cool because it was like, and there's I went down there and there's we had staff in there working and stuff, and it was kind of like that's when to me it was like, oh shit, this is fucking real, like, you know what I mean? This isn't just a bunch of people working online and we're just kind of doing something. This is like this is actually pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, this one I'm changing the story of this one. If people did want to break stories to you, what's the best way to get like an anonymous story or a story to DeSoto for them to break?
So you can either email press@decerto.com and that'll go to like all the staff.
Yeah.
If you want to be more discreet, you can always email me, and that's mike.kent@decerto.com, and I can always find, and that if there's a discreet story, I can then pass it on to the relevant person to be like, this, can you write about this story? And that's often what happens is, say an org's got like a big move that they don't want to share it with everyone. They'll email me and then I'll find the appropriate person.
Oh, that's fair. Adam Fitch is in here. He says, what's one vertical DeSoto isn't in yet that you think has potential?
Ooh, probably music or sport. I think that both of those areas are like massive, and you only want to undertake it if you had like a serious amount of resource to do it.
Yeah.
But I definitely think like sport and also music, they're two massive areas where it's like there's so many big names. We've got the infrastructure. Well, we obviously keep building the infrastructure, but that they would be the two areas that I think would be, if we did it, it would be, we'd have to like, it wouldn't just be like, for example, at the moment we're doing stuff with like influencers that are like drive cars and stuff. Yeah. So like, and that's because I'm personally interested in cars. So I was kind of watching all these YouTubers who were like talking about different subjects, and there's all these unique storylines, and I kind of spotted some trends that you'd have with, say, that we kind of already report on with TikTokers or YouTubers or whatever, or like gaming YouTubers. So I was like, the cars one I kind of got into, and we've only done that really with like a few articles. Like we've got a guy that does it full time now, but we started here and there. But if we went into music or we went into music or we went into sport, we'd have to like really, you'd have to hire like like 6 just to cover that one vertical. Like you'd have to have dedicated social people. You need a social, like in order to do it, you'd have to. Those would be the 2 big areas, I think, music and sport.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see, and people say, "I'll just start covering it," but like, obviously you can't do it like half-hearted. And I
Yeah,
suspect, with the expansion you guys are doing anyway into new verticals right now, that you kind of want to get those stable before putting
yeah.
in more resources to cover other things. I look forward to the day that Deserto, spins up even more verticals, and you're sitting there like with just probably stressed, just
Yeah.
having to delegate
Trying.
parts. Yeah, just like, oh god, I've got to cover
I
so
think
much.
I think one thing that we'll always try and do is those, as I said before, we always want Deserto to be known for like esports, gaming,
Yeah.
and kind of streamer culture. That's always going to be the core. So, how we spin out into other areas, whether that's through new brands or whether it's whatever, we don't know yet. There's always a lot of ideas. It's just about one thing you said there is sustainability. Like we don't have massive VC funding or anything like that. Me, Chris, Josh, and Nico, we own almost 90% of the company. We are profitable as a business, so we are trying to grow sustainably rather than like super fast, basically.
No angel investors. That's fair. That's interesting.
Yeah,
This question is actually from Odie. When did Deserto start? And he guessed 2009, not 2019.
it's 2008, I believe.
2008.
Yeah, 2008.
Wow.
So that was because what happened. It was that I was running the team identity forums, and they were the team at the time that actually joined OD at Dignitas. So I was the manager of that team. We had 2 teams that attended XL. I want to say 3 or 4. I can't remember actually now which one it was. One of the XL events in Birmingham. It was like the first European Call of Duty event, and it was 5v5. And our team identity won, and that was the team with like Rumsey, South, Positive, and actually interesting story those guys. I'll go back to it in a second. Rumsey, South, Positive, Thalix, and Deadbringer. So Thalix was the one that eventually started Deserto with a C. As the forum, and his brother created the design for the logo. But he, yeah. I left basically to go live in France. So the team identity forum kind of shut down, and the reason it shut down as well is because the team signed with Dignitas, because it was like that was what we were always trying to do, is just move on to a bigger team. So they signed with Dignitas with OD, and then Thalix started Deserto with a C as the forum very initially, and then a couple of months later, when I was in France, I kind of started writing news articles on it, and that's kind of how I initially got involved. But one interesting thing about that team ID team back in 2008 is that South is now our insurance broker for Deserto. So he
Oh,
does all our,
really? Wow.
yeah. And Positive is actually hires. So he runs a recruitment firm, and he hires staff for us occasionally. So when we're looking to like headhunt staff in like sales and tech and stuff like that, he's the guy we go to. So yeah, it's weird that whole full circle,
I mean, we've always said esports is a small circle. Turns out you guys are continuing to get it that way.
Yeah.
Right, very last question, because I was going to hit the last one, but I mean, this one's too good from Zav. What does Chris Marsh even do anymore other than collect a paycheck?
Chris does everything that no one else wants to do. That's he literally does absolutely everything. So everything, like he does all the accounts, he does all the odd jobs. He does everything from organizing website development to organizing SEO people to like just legal stuff. He does a lot of the legal work with the lawyers. So he basically just does all the shit jobs. Poor Chris.
Very much for Chris. All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up there, because I know you're a very busy man, and I appreciate you giving me your time. Any last thing you want to say to people listening to this or watching this on YouTube?
Just shout out, and feel free to get in touch. My DMs are open on Twitter. I do actually reply to people, so if anyone wants any, and I often give advice to people that ask for it. So if anyone wants any advice, anyone wants any, has any questions about Deserto or has any issues with Deserto, then please DM me, because I'm more than willing to have a look and get back to you on whatever it is.
That's fair. Like I said, I'll probably end up hitting you up myself just to
Yeah.
talk about content nowadays. All right, thank you so much, Mike. Like I said, I appreciate it, and I still feel like we could probably do another one of these in 6 months and have all new topics to talk about because, like I said, when you've got that long in esports, we'll go down the rabbit hole, and we will go down the rabbit hole at some point. But I appreciate you giving me your time, man. Like I said, massive congratulations to Certo once again on the Esports Awards. You guys deserve it, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Cheers, Bryce. Peace.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone who is watching this. If you're watching on Twitch, I appreciate it. If you're watching on the YouTube, please give us a subscribe. Also, make sure to follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're doing this every week, maybe twice a week if I, find enough guests. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.